Alright, last video before I make another video on actually some more content. So anyway, I met with Gary and we couldn't come to an agreement. You know, how do we make this happen? We both agree on holiness. We both agree on evangelism. We both agree, you know, got to do home studies. But I think the main ones were really evangelism and holiness. So I said, you know what? We just can't come to agreement, you know, on those things. But I told him I'll still be part of the house of prayer. I'll do my sets, you know, and I will handle my team, my band, in that way. Nobody will be playing with me if they're listening to secular music, if they look up to these secular musicians, if they watch secular movies. Like, you know, there's a standard. Like, if you got a Facebook page and all you talk about is movies and comedy and things like that, like some of these musicians were his sons, like they don't post scripture, they don't, you know, talk about God, they talk about things of the world, you know. So I was like, that's the way I'm gonna run it, and that didn't sit well with him. So he said, D, I'm gonna have to sit you down. It's like, why are you gonna sit me down? What am I doing wrong? Can't I be independent in the house of prayer? Can I be independent? Can I be my own, you know, ministry? Didn't you say the house of prayer was all ministries, all denominations coming together? Even Presbyterians, they had Presbyterians, and probably even enjoy the Catholics, you know, to come in. I mean, but me, I had to be sat down. So because I'm creating division. And so I couldn't have that platform. So I said, all right, man. It is what it is. And that was the last straw for me. I was like, you know what? This politically correctness garbage that's going on in Christianity makes me sick to my stomach. So I left, man. I said, I'm gone. Like this, I can't take this mess anymore. So I left. Man. And 2 years. I grew out my hair for 2 years, and my hair got really long, beard got pretty long, and it was a covenant that I made with God, you know, that I would never return back to a man-made 501c3, pagan, man-imposed traditions and doctrines of men church called Christianity ever again. I was out seeking something deeper. I didn't know what it was yet. I was just scratching the surface, but I knew that I was going to be on a search for something old, something ancient, something from the scriptures, the book of Acts, the first ecclesia, the congregation. And I never wanted to return back. 2 years. So 2 years came and gone. Gary blocked me from Facebook. He couldn't see the videos I was starting to post up about the last straw ministries. And anyway, my wife left with me. She was originally going to go on a sabbatical, but she left and didn't return because I didn't return. And even though we weren't in covenant marriage yet, you know, no, Gary didn't call her to see how she was doing, and no, his wife didn't call her as a good shepherd would of a lost sheep. Nobody reached out to her, and the excuse was that, oh, I was going to be her husband, but whatever. But we recently went back. This month, we went back. We're in 2013, September 2013, and we met with Gary. And the purpose really was for my wife to get closure, to explain why she left. That she didn't leave for the same reasons I left. And so she was able to share that. She got that off her chest. But I took the opportunity to reignite the conversation that we had so my wife could hear it for herself. One of the reasons is because the scripture says, do not receive an accusation against an elder unless it's by 2 or 3 witnesses. So this time I got my wife, and she was able to hear it for herself. I wish she would do a video, but I don't think she will. That's up to her. She might not. I don't know. But But we went there, and I reignited the conversation, and sure enough, there were the answers. We couldn't agree on the vehicle. We're operating in the spirit of the Levitical priesthood, not in the actual Levitical priesthood, and we're under the Melchizedek priesthood, and the temple's going to be rebuilt, and it's going to be under the Melchizedek priesthood, and which that's not what I see in Scripture. I see in Isaiah, I believe 66. I'll post the correct scripture here. Isaiah 66, it talks about he's going to choose Levites again. Right now we don't have any Levites. We don't have a temple. But in Hebrews talks about that he's the priest in heaven, but there's an earthly priesthood. That's the Levites. Anyway, totally different from what the House of Prayer is teaching. But, if you're going to operate in the spirit of the Levites, the Levitical priesthood, adapt the standard. Like, what's so difficult about that? What is so difficult? Help me understand. There's nothing difficult about that. What else? Oh, he brought up something that I didn't even ask to bring up. He talked about, now we got this Obamacare thing happening, and they're trying to force me to get into the system. And I'm like, what do you mean by that? Like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, my insurance that I have right now, what they did because of Obamacare, they took out a lot of benefits. So basically, I have this insurance, this independent insurance, but it's like it's not paying for anything, really. They're like trying to force you to go to Obamacare, but I'm not going. And then, like, I wanted to say inside, or I didn't think about it till later, but I'm like, well, maybe you should get a real job. Maybe your job shouldn't be a director of a house of prayer, which is a congregational ecclesiastic organization called church. Sounds like a good idea to me. I mean, the apostles had jobs. The apostle Paul made tents, and our Messiah himself was a carpenter. But just that's the mentality of man-imposed religion. It's like, now there's some Christian churches that they work and they're pastors, and I respect that. Good old-fashioned way of doing it, which is closer to Scripture than anything. But now it's like, how do you make a salary off of solely being a director? Where is that in a fivefold ministry? Where's a director? And it just, he brought that up. I didn't even bring it up. I just thought that was God really just exposing, him just exposing himself. Okay, last thing I'm going to say is I invited Gary. I said, Gary, I'm in a place now where I can speak about these things a little bit more comfortably and have some scripture to back it up. Get some history, some church history, and seeing where things have gone into pagan traditions and man-made traditions. And I believe the Messiah is against these things. And I would like to discuss these things with you. Reignite this conversation and try to do this thing right. Bring your leadership, so it's not just me and you secretly having meetings. Bring your leadership. I'll bring my wife and maybe somebody else that might tag along with me. But right now I really don't have anybody other than on Facebook who's on different parts of the world. I'll bring my wife with me and we can discuss these. We can have a debate. He didn't like the word debate. He thought that lacked relationship, and he'd rather discuss. So I was like, all right, we're going to discuss it then. How about that? I won't use the word debate. We'll discuss. And he was still standoffish. He said, oh, it sounds like you're going to have, why do you need witnesses? It sounds like a court, And I'm like, look, man, this is about sound doctrine, man. You know what I mean? He's like, yeah, but a debate, the thing I have about debates is like one person comes with their idea, the other person comes across with their idea. They never really talk to each other. They both share their ideas and then they go. I was like, well, we all have a decision to make, but at least they're debating. At least they're discussing these things. I respect that. The Bereans got together and studied the scriptures to see if what the apostle said was true. Let's do it. Can we do it? And he was like, yeah, I don't know, maybe, Oh, you want to know another thing? This is the one that got me. He said he loved me like a son. And it hurt him to have to sit me down. He was physically sick over it. And I was glad I told him straight to his face, Gary, your love for me is very superficial. Your love for me was surrounded by me being a musician and a singer under this ministry, and doing sound, and serving. We didn't go out to eat together. We didn't meet house to house. We didn't study together. We didn't go out and preach together. You know, your love for me was very superficial. Your love for me was based upon this ministry, International House of Prayer Eastern Gate. And your love for me has a limit. When anything I say begins to impose upon the ministry, or aka the organization, I think that's a more appropriate thing to say, because it's a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Once I begin to challenge anything that you do in the organization, your love for me disappears. And he said, maybe you're right. I said, I know I'm right. Your mindset, you have an umbrella, you have a window, you have a world view already set up because of the umbrella that you're under, the House of Prayer movement. I said, me on the other hand, 2 years ago, I left and I have never joined another organization since. So my mindset is clear from any umbrella. If anything, my old umbrella thoughts are being washed away by solely reading the scriptures and doing deep study on the word and doctrine and history, church history. So I'm constantly being broken down, but I'm opening myself for that. I'm leaving myself vulnerable to that. Versus you're in a high position. It's harder for you to humble yourself. But I'm inviting you, can we speak about these things? And at that point, it was very, he was like, maybe I'll consider it. I think a few hours later that day, or maybe the next day, he texts my wife, because he doesn't have communication with me or Facebook with me. So he Facebooked my wife and said, I spoke to the elders, and they encouraged me not to meet with you and engage in these discussions. They said it'll be very unfruitful. That's how you know you're in a cult. That's how you know you're in a cult. That's how you know you're under a controlling. Oh, you want to know another thing how I know that they're controlling? Because I said, I told my wife in front of Gary, I was like, you know what? Gary never told me to leave the House of Prayer. I'll give him that. He never told me to leave. He just sat me down. I could have stayed. I voluntarily left. And he's like, yeah, that's right. But later, I said, so, Gary, how would you have felt if, or how would you feel if we don't get to meet, if maybe I come here to the House of Prayer and I stay in the cafe area and I begin to have discussions, with the people and begin to, bring up man-made tradition versus the scriptures, doctrines of men versus sound doctrine, pagan Christianity versus scripture. Would you be okay with that? He said no. He said, I would rather you come to me, the leader. I said, why? But if you say no, why can't I just go to the people? He said, because, it's gonna create basically division. You're gonna have this group that's believing that. You're gonna have this group that's believing that. What's wrong with that? Are people not allowed to think for themselves? Are people not allowed to have their own interpretation and understanding of the scripture? No. They're only allowed to have your interpretation, your umbrella, your worldview. And that's why you keep them so busy with internships and all these man-made strategies that comes from Greek philosophy and Greek mindsets. Seminary school and college and universities. This is how you're indoctrinating people. Matter of fact, you claim that colleges indoctrinate people, you indoctrinate them just the same.